Israel now has a wartime cabinet. Some of the more radical elements have been left on the side just for the time being. What does this war mean for the politics of Benjamin Netanyahu? Is Bibi's political career over in your view?
You know, people have said that about him for a long time. He's one of the shrewdest politicians I've ever met. He's very, very canny. He's also pretty opportunistic, by which I mean he will ally with whoever it takes to stay in power. So I would never rule him out, but I think it's looking tough. It's looking hard because he has been discredited. A lot of people on the right and the left feel like he was pursuing the wrong strategy. And, you know, this is one of the things that when a politician does something that undermines his own image of himself, that's the worst. Because Bibi always said he was Mr. Security, Mr. National Security, the tough guy. Well, the tough guy is the guy who seemed to be asleep at the switch when you had this massive attack. So it's going to be tough for him, but don't make a mistake of thinking that that means you'll get a more left-wing government in Israel. I mean, if you get Bibi Netanyahu discredited, that might actually move you to another Likud leader, or it could even mean an even more right-wing government. The left in Israel, I mean, the fundamental dynamic that has taken place, and this is where Palestinians, I think, really do, one has to place a lot of the blame on them. When Arafat turns down the Camp David agreement that Ehud Barak and Bill Clinton put together, Arafat turns that down and launches an intifada. That destroyed the Israeli left for a generation. I mean, that was 2000. We're in 2023. Basically, the left has been out of power in any meaningful sense all that time. And it was because of that. It was because of that feeling that even when we tried to give them a state, they didn't, they didn't accept it. Now, there are many good Palestinian accounts of what the nature of that proposal was. It wasn't a proper state. It wasn't a full state. But I think the political effect, nevertheless, was to destroy the Israeli left. I don't think this attack will help revive the Israeli left. And that's the fundamental problem. The Israeli left is willing to work toward a Palestinian state. This new Israeli right is fundamentally unwilling. And it has no answer to this problem. What do you do with 5.5 million Palestinians? They seem to think they can just, kind of keep them in this servile condition forever. But I think they're wrong.
Campuses globally have seen massive protest. Professors, deans, students, very agitated. How are you seeing this play out? Because a lot of the woke, liberal, young blood seems to actually be weighing in on the side of the Palestinians, and the capitalist, older professors are just appalled by what these young students are saying. They're telling parents, "Apne bachcho ko dekho, kya kar rahe?"
It's not even just the professors, it's really the trustees and the donors. I think I'm an old-fashioned classical liberal. I believe in free speech. I think people who want to be pro-Palestinian on campus should be heard. People who want to be pro-Israel should be heard. I don't think, in my view, it's a bad idea to chill that kind of speech. And it's been a little sad to see that at the end of the day, even in a place like America, so dedicated to free speech for too many people ends with the things you really don't like to hear. But the whole nature of free speech is you're protecting free speech not for just the speech you agree with, but it's the speech you violently disagree with. It's the speech that, is almost, makes you, sets your hair on fire. That should be the way universities handle it. The University of Chicago, to give them credit, is the one place that has gotten it right. The university said, we are taking no position on this issue, as we have never taken a position on anything. We did not take a position after 9/11. We did not take a position after Black Lives Matter. Our position is we believe in freedom of expression, inquiry, academic research, and in order to allow that to be fostered, we as an institution have to take no position so that all our students and our faculty can feel they can take whatever positions they want. That is the appropriate position for a university. Not, but what happened is really, this all dates back to the George Floyd murder. And obviously a horrible thing. Universities decided that they wanted to be woke. And so they all clambered on, and they made statements denouncing it. Now, if you make a statement denouncing one thing, then when the Hamas attack happened, people started saying, well, why are you not denouncing that? So then they denounced that. Then the Palestinians said, now why are you not denouncing the Israeli strikes on Gaza? They've gotten themselves into a crazy situation. They will regret having tried to jump onto this woke bandwagon. They should have followed Chicago's example.
Because now you've got activist investors saying, give us a list of all those students on campus who supported the Palestinian cause. We'll ensure our companies and the ones that we control don't hire these guys. And that's quite...
It has a chilling effect on free speech. Obviously, they're private employers. They should be able to employ whomever they want. Is that the best use of your leadership to, I mean, again, I say, these people are not committing acts of terror themselves. They're making an argument, which I disagree with, that, what Hamas did was some kind of legitimate armed resistance. But people forget, on American campuses during the 70s, there were people who openly spoke in favor of the North Vietnamese, openly spoke in favor of Pol Pot in Cambodia, openly spoke in favor of all kinds of radical Maoist guerrilla movements. In India, people spoke in favor of the Naxalites. I mean, that's what a free society is.
Things have changed, though, from there, where it's becoming less and less permissible to say these things. Now, a lot hinges on the American elections, and I want your sense of how you see things shape up from where we're at. Are we almost inevitably heading towards a Trump versus Biden face-off again?
It looks like that. Look, Biden is, it's his choice. And if he decides that he's going to run, and he seems to have decided, no one in the Democratic Party will challenge him. Look, he's been a very successful Democratic president. He has passed more important legislation than any Democratic president since Lyndon Johnson. Popularity is low, but I think we're in an age of this partisan warfare where nobody's popularity really gets above 45% or so. He's, I think, 39-40% right now. Trump was in the same range. The reality is, when you become president of the United States right now, 40% of the country hates you, just to start with, because what party you come from. Maybe 45% hates you. So your room to maneuver is very, very limited. I mean, people forget now, after 9/11, George Bush's popularity went to like 78 or 85% or something. Bush Sr.'s popularity after the first Iraq War was at 91%. These numbers are history. They'll never see them, at least not in the foreseeable future. Deeply divided partisan country. But if Biden decides to run, no Democrat will deny him the nomination.
Who might win a Trump versus Biden face-off?
Right now, honestly, it is looking pretty dead even. My own gut is, at the end of the day, Biden will probably win that, because I believe that there is a small working majority in the U.S. that does not want to vote for Trump. They're not enthusiastic about Biden, but they don't want to vote for Trump. And I say this on the basis, if you look at, there have been many elections, in state elections, the House of Representatives, midterm elections. In all of them, the Trump-oriented candidates have done worse than people expected. So there is some pushback against Trump. But look, it's very close. If Biden has a serious health issue and stays on the ticket and insists on running, if the economy goes into the tank and does badly, could it change? Yeah, it's very scary that we are that. And remember, this is not a national election. Biden will win by probably close to 10 million votes overall. But because of the weird electoral college system, this election for the most powerful man in the world is going to be decided in 4 states in America, probably Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. And in those states, the cities are all going to go Democratic, the rural areas are all going to go Republican, and it's going to be this sliver of voters in what we call the exurbs, the places around the cities, probably 100,000 voters, mostly working age women, are going to decide the fate of the war in Iraq, the war in Ukraine, what happens in China, Taiwan, the future of the international system. It's really breathtaking when you think about how small a number of people are going to have an impact on this vast issue.
Fascinating. You spoke of leaders and their plummeting popularity ratings, not just in the US but globally. What then, according to you, from an international prism, explains Prime Minister Modi's consistently high ratings? Like Morning Consult puts him at 70% plus, and there's no war. It's, you know, he's 9 years into his second prime ministership, and yet his ratings are higher than any leader anywhere in the world.
I think Narendra Modi has found a way to connect with the ordinary Hindu voter in India in a way that almost nobody, I think, has been able to do it. And he's found a way to connect with a particular rising aspiration of Indians who felt that they were not left behind, but their time had not yet come. You know, this is not necessarily the urban, educated, elite voter. This is the guy in the second or third tier city who maybe has some education but not a college education, but is now moving up. And that sense of pride that that person has in this upward movement, Modi has been able to speak to and to capture very powerfully. It's worth noting the limits, though, which is the BJP and Modi does not have much purchase in the South. He obviously does not have much purchase with the 200 million Indian Muslims, or with Christians, or with other minorities. But with the bulk of the Indian voter, and with that core that I'm describing, he has been able to very powerfully represent their aspirations, their sense of progress, their sense of pride in themselves, which is a very, you know, it's a very admirable thing. I would hope that he would use that to build a more inclusive India. But you cannot deny the achievement, which is an extraordinary political achievement.
Without getting into the nuances of national politics, from an international prism, your sense of his re-election chances, because the likes of Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher, very important political characters in their country, had a very tough time 10 years on in their third election. How do you see, from an international perspective, Prime Minister Modi's re-election chances?
Yeah, there's some good studies that show that after 10 years it becomes very hard. You know, just because in democracies voters get tired of you. I don't see that right now with Modi. It seems he still seems very vital and vibrant. It's possible, I think, that you could imagine. I think the BJP will do worse than it did in the last election, but somebody defeating him, I think you'd need the entire opposition to come together. You'd need them to come together in a cohesive way so that there was always a one-to-one BJP versus the coalition, rather than, you know, one Congress candidate, one DMK candidate, one whatever. So far the opposition does not seem to have that unity of purpose. And then the question is, do you also need to have an alternative, charismatic leader who can you know, be a contester? I don't know that. Certainly in the 90s, India had many, shall we call them, not particularly charismatic people like Narasimha Rao, Deva Gowda. But certainly you need an opposition that is strategically unified in a very disciplined way. I don't see that right now.